Aurora had warned him the night before, her voice quiet yet heavy. This phase will test your limits. Physically, neurologically, emotionally. If at any point you want to stop, and he had answered before she finished, I won't. Now, as he stepped into the lab, fatigue pressed against his bones like invisible weights. The world seemed sharper, yet strangely distant colors, too vivid, sounds too layered, emotions too close to the surface. Aurora noticed instantly. Did you sleep at all? A little, he lied. Dr. Patel gave him a sympathetic look. Well, monitor you closely today. Any change, even subtle, you tell us. Mason nodded, though his mind wandered again to Liam sleeping in his hospital bed, unaware of how violently his father's body was being rewritten on a cellular level. Aurora gestured to the chair. Let's begin. Today's infusion wasn't a single serum but a sequence 3 phases, each designed to push his immune system into a controlled stress response. The needles were familiar now, the burn, the heat, the sudden heaviness settling behind his eyes. But this time, something new stirred beneath it all, a hum coursing through his veins, as if electricity had learned to whisper. The room dimmed, the machines beeped, Aurora's voice floated somewhere near him. You're doing fine, Mason. Keep breathing, he tried. But the second infusion hit harder than the first, waves of discomfort rising like tides in his chest. He gasped, fingers curling around the chair's armrests. Vitals spiking, Patel said quickly. We're reaching threshold. Hold the line, Aurora answered. Mason, stay with us. I'm trying, he forced out, though his voice sounded distant. Suddenly, a flood of images pulsed through his mind. Liam laughing in the subway. Liam on the floor, the morning he collapsed. Liam clinging to his sleeve saying, promise you won't leave. Mason flinched. The surge of emotion hit harder than any physical pain. Aurora stepped closer, gripping his hand. Focus on my voice. Not the noise inside your mind. But the noise grew louder, rising into a crescendo of memories he hadn't invited, memories head buried. The accident. The screams. The shudder of metal. His supervisor yelling that the maintenance logs were wrong. That someone had falsified the reports. That the blame would fall somewhere, anywhere. He had tried to speak, but fear sealed his mouth shut. Cowardice disguised as survival. Mason gasped, his body jerking as the serum raged inside him. Mason, look at me! Aurora demanded, her tone sharp yet terrified. His eyes snapped open, and in that split second, something inside him shifted, not broken, not damaged, awakened. The monitors lit up in a way neither Patel nor Aurora had ever seen. Neural conductivity spiked so high the system struggled to track it. Patel stared at the data in disbelief. This isn't possible. His pathways are rewriting? Aurora didn't answer. She watched Mason with an intensity that bordered on awe. His system isn't collapsing. It's adapting again. Mason's breath steadied slowly, each inhale dragging him back from whatever mental precipice had teetered on. Sweat dripped down his brow. His pulse thumped like a recovering drumbeat. After several minutes, Aurora released his hand. You stabilized yourself. He blinked. I didn't do anything. You did, she whispered. Something in you responded to the overload and neutralized it. Mason, this shouldn't be possible. He would have asked more, but Patel cleared her throat. There's another issue. Aurora turned. What? The scan shows something new. A structural pattern in his immune mapping, an emerging framework. Almost like what? Mason demanded. Patel hesitated, then finally said it aloud. Like his body is beginning to form the template for a treatment. Aurora froze. The implication hit the air like thunder. Mason, she said, stepping back in stunned realization. This isn't just data. This could be the breakthrough. If your system continues adapting this quickly, we may be able to derive a serum for Liam far sooner than expected. Mason felt dizzy in a different way now, this time from hope. But then Patel's voice cut through sharply. There's a risk. A serious one. If his system continues adapting at this rate, it could overshoot stability. The immune cycle could collapse, or reach a level where intervention becomes impossible. Aurora's gaze snapped to Mason. We'll have to slow the treatment. No, Mason said instantly. Mason, no, he repeated, stronger this time. If this is working, if it's building a path for Liam, then we move forward. Not backward. Aurora's breath trembled. This could kill you. He shook his head. Not before it saves him. Aurora closed her eyes, struggling with the war inside her, logic against emotion, science against fear. When she opened them again, the decision was made. Then tomorrow, she whispered, we push into the final phase. And though she said it calmly, the truth pressed its shadow over them. The final phase could save Liam, but it could cost Mason everything. Night settled over the city like a shroud, muffling everything under its quiet, watchful weight. Mason didn't go home after leaving the lab. He didn't go to the hospital either. Instead, he wandered the streets until his legs trembled, until exhaustion pressed him to a stop beneath the dim glow of a street lamp. The world around him felt too big, too sharp, too full of looming consequences. He pressed his hands to his knees, breathing through the throbbing ache, spreading through his muscles, an ache he couldn't tell was from the trial, or from fear. Tomorrow was the final phase. Final. Such a small word for something that carried the weight of life and death. When he finally reached the hospital, it was well past visiting hours, but the night nurse recognized him and let him in without a word. Mason stepped quietly into Liam's room, where the soft whir of machines blended with the deeper rhythm of his son's breathing. Liam stirred when Mason sat beside him. "Dad, you came back." "Of course I did," Mason whispered, brushing his fingers through the boy's hair. "I always will." Liam blinked drowsily. "You look tired again?" Mason swallowed a lump in his throat. "I'm fine." "No," Liam said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're lying again." The honesty in those young eyes cut deeper than any truth Aurora could reveal. "Dad, are you sick too?" The question hit him so hard he had to look away. He couldn't lie, not now. Not when everything inside him was unraveling under the weight of what tomorrow demanded. I'm working with someone," Mason said carefully. "Someone who's trying to help us both." Liam reached for his father's trembling hand. "Dr. Hale?" Mason froze. "How did you?" Liam smiled faintly. "You talk in your sleep sometimes." He let out a weak laugh, one that dissolved into a shaky sigh. The boy knew more than he ever let on, and Mason suddenly realized that Liam wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of being left behind. "I won't leave you," Mason whispered fiercely, pulling his son into a gentle embrace. Liam rested his head against his father's chest. "I know," but the way he said it made Mason feel the truth shifting dangerously beneath them. Knowing wasn't the same as believing, and believing wasn't the same as surviving. Aurora didn't sleep that night either. Her lab was dark except for the soft glow of monitors and the sterile white light she used to illuminate the research table. She'd been staring at Mason's latest scans for hours, tracing the impossible curves of his immune cycles, the spiraling shifts in his neural activity. Data that defied reason, data that whispered a terrifying possibility: Mason Ward might not survive. Phase 3. She closed her eyes, pressing her fingers against them until stars flashed behind her lids. She told herself she could detach, that she could remain clinical, methodical, untouched. But she couldn't. Not with him. Not with the way he faced every needle, every wave of pain, with the single-minded determination of a man who'd long since accepted that his own life was secondary. Not with the way his voice cracked each time he said his son's name. Not with the way he looked at her as if she were the one person he trusted to walk him back from the edge. A soft sound broke her concentration. Dr. Patel stepped into the lab, her expression stiff with concern. "Aurora, you can't keep doing this." Aurora didn't turn. "Doing what?" "Pretending you're not terrified." Patel crossed her arms. "If he doesn't make it through phase 3, Aurora snapped, he will." Patel paused. "And if he doesn't?" Aurora's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then it'll have failed him. And his son. And Elise. Again." Patel softened. "Aurora, this isn't your burden alone." "It is," Aurora murmured. "Because I'm the one who couldn't save her? And I'm the one who might kill him trying to save his son." Patel stepped closer. "You care about him." Aurora's breath caught. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Patel sighed. "Then be honest. With him and with yourself. If he goes into phase 3, you must accept that you might lose him." Aurora's eyes stung. "I can't lose him. Not now. Not after." She stopped herself, clenching the edge of the table. Silence hung between them, heavy with truths neither wanted to face. Finally, Patel spoke quietly. "Then prepare him. And yourself. Tomorrow, everything changes." Aurora nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "Tomorrow." But as she stared at Mason's data glowing on the screen, A single question pierced through the scientific noise. How do you save a child without destroying the father who made you believe in redemption again? The morning of Phase 3 arrived with a suffocating stillness, as if the world sensed the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Mason woke before the hospital lights brightened, his body heavy, his mind caught between fear and determination. He watched Liam sleep for a long moment, memorizing the small rise and fall of his chest, the faint flutter of his lashes, the fragile life that pulsed beneath skin too pale. He whispered, "I'll fix this, buddy," though part of him feared the promise would cost him more than he could give. By the time he reached Aurora's facility, a thin mist clung to the streets, turning the building's windows into muted mirrors. The lab lights flickered awake as he entered, cold and surgical. Dr. Patel was already reviewing data with a tense rhythm in her movements. Aurora stood at the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly, as if holding herself together by sheer force. When she turned, Mason saw the fear she had tried to bury but couldn't. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. Mason stepped forward. "Yes, I do." Aurora's breath trembled. Phase 3 is designed to push your system to the brink so we can extract a complete template. Once it begins, I can't stop it unless your vitals crash. "And even then I know the risks," Mason interrupted, though the truth twisted inside him. But Liam doesn't have options left. Aurora stared at him, really stared, and something inside her cracked. "Why do you always speak as if your life is worth less?" "Because his is worth more," Mason said simply. That truth was the center of every choice Head ever made. Aurora blinked away the shine in her eyes and finally nodded. "Then let's begin." The room dimmed to a muted blue. "Doctor." Patel prepared the infusion, 3 vials arranged like a sequence of unspoken destinies. Mason eased into the chair, his heartbeat echoing in his ears, his breath shallow. Aurora adjusted the sensors, her fingers brushing his skin with a tenderness she tried to disguise as clinical necessity. "Breathe steadily," she murmured. "I'm ready," Mason said, though part of him wasn't sure anyone could be ready for this. The first serum entered his bloodstream with a familiar burn, but beneath it lurked something denser, heavier, like molten metal threading through his veins. His muscles tightened involuntarily. Patel checked the monitors. Initial spike rising, but manageable. Proceeding with second infusion. The second dose hit harder. Mason inhaled sharply as a surge exploded through his chest, radiating outward in convulsing waves. His vision fractured into light, shadow, and pulsing shapes. He clenched the chair, knuckles bleaching white. "Mason, stay with me." Aurora's voice cut through the chaos. He tried, but the storm inside him intensified. His heart pounded like it was trying to break free from bone. His limbs shook uncontrollably. A ringing filled his ears. "This is too fast," Patel warned. "His markers are destabilizing." "No," Aurora countered, leaning close. "Not destabilizing, transitioning." Her voice quivered. "Mason, you're crossing the threshold. Keep breathing, keep fighting." But Mason could feel it. His body wasn't just responding. It was rewriting itself, unraveling and reassembling in bursts of impossible sensation. He struggled to remain conscious. Then the third and final infusion began. Pain. Not sharp, but deep, like something ancient waking inside him. His back arched, his breath caught. Every nerve felt as though it were being pulled through fire and ice at once. He heard voices, distant and muffled. Vitals surging too high. "Hold the restraints, he's convulsing." "Aurora? We're going to lose him." "No." Aurora's voice shattered the panic. "Mason, look at me." Through the blinding light behind his eyes, he forced them open. Aurora's face hovered inches from his own, her hands gripping his cheeks, her eyes burning with terror and something far deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. "You come back to me," she whispered. "Do you hear me? Don't leave." Her voice became a tether thin, trembling, but unbreakable. He clung to it as everything else inside him unraveled. His lungs seized, then released. His pulse crashed, then surged. His vision dissolved into pure white, and then, violently, abruptly, everything went still. The machine stopped screaming. His body slackened against the chair. Patel gasped. "His levels? They just reset?" Aurora's eyes widened with disbelief. Because on the monitors, where chaos had raged, seconds before patterns now formed, balanced, stable, structured. "Mason," Aurora breathed. You survived Phase 3. But as she looked at him motionless, unconscious, barely breathing, another truth struck her with the force of a breaking world. Survival didn't guarantee he'd ever wake up. For several heart-stopping seconds, the lab fell into a silence so complete it felt like the room itself forgot how to breathe. Mason's body lay limp in the chair, his chest barely rising, his eyelids fluttering but unmoving. Aurora hovered inches from him, her hands trembling as they hovered near his shoulders, not touching, afraid to confirm the worst. "Check his vitals again," she whispered. "Doctor." Patel's fingers flew across the tablet. Heartbeat is faint but present. Respiratory rate low, but stable. Neurological activity. She paused. "Aurora, you need to see this." Aurora forced herself to look at the screen. For a moment, she forgot how to speak, because the neural activity displayed wasn't flatlining or fading, it was evolving. Patterns rippled across Mason's scan, complex, coordinated, resonant, not chaotic like before, not reactive, purposeful, as though his mind had learned to weave meaning into electricity. Patel breathed. "This is unprecedented." Aurora shook her head slowly, disbelief breaking through her fear. "No, this is impossible." And yet, it was happening right in front of her. Mason's body, moments ago on the edge of collapse, was stabilizing itself. Lines on the monitors shifted into smooth, rhythmic waves. The flickering anomalies resolved into ordered structures, as if something inside him had crossed a threshold and refused to step back. Aurora leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Mason, come back." But he didn't respond. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Eventually, they transferred him from the chair to a recovery bed. His pulse remained steady, almost too steady, unnaturally consistent, as if synchronized with an unheard rhythm. Patel monitored the feed. "His immune structure is reorganizing." The serum didn't override his system, it fused with it. "The treatment is modeling itself directly around his biological responses." "How long until he wakes up?" Aurora asked, her voice thin. Patel hesitated. "I don't know." Aurora closed her eyes, pressing her palms to the edge of the bed. She wasn't ready for this, not emotionally, not scientifically. The weight of her choices pressed down on her chest. "You said this phase could kill him," Patel murmured gently. "But Aurora, look at him. He's not dying." "I know," Aurora whispered. "You saved him." Aurora's breath shook. "Or I turned him into something I don't understand." Patel placed a hand on her arm. "You weren't alone in this. He chose this." Aurora looked at Mason, his face unnaturally calm, the tension erased, replaced by a stillness that frightened her more than the chaos had. "He chose it for his son," she said quietly. "Not for himself. And not for me." Patel gave her a knowing look. People don't risk everything unless they trust someone. Aurora looked away, unable to face the truth those words carried. Hours passed. Liam's doctor called for updates, unaware that the man who loved the boy more than life itself lay unconscious in a private lab miles away. Aurora didn't allow herself to leave Mason's side. She watched the steady rise and fall of his chest, listened to the quiet hum of the machines, and counted each second he didn't wake up. She reached out, hesitating before brushing her fingertips across the back of his hand. "You said you wouldn't leave your son," she whispered. "So don't leave me to tell him you didn't come back." Her voice cracked. She bowed her head over his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin and the undertow of grief pulling at her. "I can't lose you too," she breathed. "Not again. Not after Elise. Not after everything." Her confession dissolved into the quiet air. And then a tremor. Barely noticeable. Subtle as a sigh. Aurora's head snapped up. "Mason?" His fingers twitched. Patel rushed over. "We're seeing neurological activation. He's coming out." Aurora leaned close, heart pounding. "Mason, can you hear me?" Another twitch, stronger this time. His brows tightened, breath hitching as if fighting his way through a heavy fog. "Mason," Aurora repeated, voice trembling. "Follow my voice." For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Mason's eyelids lifted. His gaze unfocused at first, shadows and light blending together until finally, they settled on her. Aurora inhaled sharply, relief flooding her so violently she had to grasp the bedrail. "Mason," she whispered. "You're alive." He blinked slowly, and then spoke, his voice rough, distant, but unmistakably conscious. "Aurora, what happened to me?" She exhaled a shaky breath, brushing a tear from her cheek. You survived, she said. But the truth, heavy and electric, lingered unspoken. He hadn't just survived. He had changed. And nothing about him or the treatment would ever be the same. Mason lay still for several long seconds, breathing as though every inhale tugged him closer to consciousness. Aurora hovered beside him, torn between stepping back and holding on. His eyes, once dulled by exhaustion, now gleamed with a startling clarity, as if the world had sharpened into painful focus. Mason, she whispered again, do you know where you are? He blinked slowly. Lab, Phase 3. His voice was gravel. I remember the pain. Then, he shook his head faintly, wincing. Then everything went white. Aurora forced a steadying breath. You crossed the threshold. More than crossed it, you stabilized beyond every model. He frowned. Is that good? Patel stepped forward from the monitors. Good is one word for it. Extraordinary is another. Unbelievable. Dangerous. She exhaled. Your immune system is unlike anything we've recorded. Meaning what? Mason pressed. Aurora hesitated, meaning your body integrated the serum as if it were built for it. You're the first template we've ever seen form in real time. His brows knit. A template? For Liam's treatment? Yes, she whispered. But it's more complicated. Your neural pathways also reorganize during the overload. I need to run tests. But, she swallowed. You may experience symptoms, cognitive shifts, emotional spikes, sensory disturbances, side effects, Mason murmured. You warned me. Aurora looked away. Not these. Before she could elaborate, Mason tried to sit up and instantly sucked in a breath as pain shot through his spine. Not sharp pain, intense awareness. Every nerve felt awake, alive, humming with energy he couldn't control. Aurora steadied him. Slowly, her hand brushed his shoulder, and Mason startled not from the touch, but from the ripple it sent through his senses. Her warmth, her presence, her heartbeat, he felt all of it like a resonance through his skin. He drew a trembling breath. Something's wrong. Aurora stiffened. Tell me exactly what you feel. Mason closed his eyes. Everything. Too much. The air, the lights, even your voice. It's like my senses won't filter anything out. Patel lifted a monitor. Neurological hypersensitivity. Expected after rapid neural restructuring. Aurora shook her head. Expected, yes, but not at this magnitude. Mason rubbed his temples. Will it pass? It should. Aurora answered softly. But your system is still stabilizing. You need rest and observation. Mason lowered his hands and met her gaze. I want to see Liam. Aurora froze. Mason, in your condition I need to see him, he repeated, voice cracking. Please. Aurora wanted to say no. She wanted to protect him from himself, from the consequences she had helped create. But she also understood the terror in his eyes. Fine, she conceded. But you're not going alone. The hospital's fluorescent lights felt like needles against Mason's eyes. The sounds, the shuffle of shoes, distant coughs, the rhythmic chirp of heart monitors pressed against him from every direction. He clenched his jaw as Aurora kept a protective hand near his elbow. Mason, she murmured, if this becomes too much, you tell me. He nodded, though the truth was, everything was already too much. When they reached Liam's room, Mason paused in the doorway. The boy was sitting up, coloring absently, his small frame wrapped in a blanket. He looked up, and his face lit with a joy so pure it softened every ache inside Mason. Dad? Mason stepped forward, forcing his legs to steady. Hey, buddy? But as he approached, a strange sensation pulsed through him, an instinctive awareness of Liam's fragility. He saw the pallor in his son's cheeks, the tremble in his fingers, the subtle weakening in the rise of his chest. He felt the illness in him not metaphorically, but as though his own body recognized it, responded to it, resonated with it. He froze. Aurora's hand touched his back. Mason? Liam frowned. Dad, what's wrong? Mason struggled to breathe. I can feel it. Aurora stiffened. Feel what? In a shaking whisper, Mason said, his illness? I can feel what's happening inside him. Patel, who had accompanied them, gasped. That's not possible. But Aurora knew deep down, in the quiet, terrifying place where intuition meets truth, that Mason's transformation had broken the boundaries of what should be possible. Mason, she said gently. Look at me. This is hypersensitivity. A temporary response. No, he whispered, shaking his head. This is something else. His pulse thundered. Liam reached for him. Dad, please don't be scared. Mason knelt, ignoring the tremor in his muscles, and pulled his son into a gentle embrace. I'm not scared, he whispered, but he was. Because for the first time since the trial began, he realized he wasn't just connected to the serum. He was connected to his son, to his illness, to his decline, to his pain. And that connection, glowing, humming, impossible, might change everything. Aurora had seen extraordinary things in her years of research: cells reprogramming themselves, immune systems fighting with unexpected resilience, genetic markers behaving like biological riddles. But nothing had prepared her for what she witnessed in that hospital room. Mason knelt beside his son, holding him with trembling arms, his body vibrating with an awareness that didn't belong to any medical theory she had ever studied. His breaths grew shallow, synchronized with Liam's. His pulse shifted, aligning itself unconsciously to the boy's fragile rhythm. It was as though Mason's body was rewriting its entire sensory profile around a single truth. Liam. Dr. Patel whispered from behind Aurora. This level of empathetic resonance, there's no precedent. Not medically. Not neurologically. Aurora swallowed. It's not empathy, it's biological synchronization. Mason looked up at them, horror and awe blending in his gaze. I can feel where it hurts. Not the pain, just the imbalance. The weakness. He pressed a hand to his chest. It's like my body is reading his. Aurora stepped closer, her voice soft and stunned. The serum integrated too deeply. Your systems are mirroring each other. Mason tightened his embrace around Liam. Can I use this? Can it help him? It's not that simple, Aurora said, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. Biological resonance doesn't mean transfer. You're detecting his illness, not absorbing it. But what if Mason stopped himself, shaking his head as dizziness washed over him again? Aurora stepped forward quickly. Sit down, now. He obeyed, sinking into a chair beside the bed. Liam held his hand tightly, sensing the shift. Dad, are you okay? The boy whispered. Mason forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. You feel like me, Liam added, touching his father's cheek with small fingers. Warm. Like sick warm. Aurora inhaled sharply. Liam, sweetie, Mason is just recovering from some treatment. But Liam shook his head. No, it's the same warm. Aurora's heart hammered. She hadn't expected the synchronization to be perceptible. Patel stepped closer to Aurora and spoke low. If Mason's system is mapping Liam's, then Phase 3 triggered cross-pattern resonance. It's dangerous. Their immune systems are linked subtly, but linked. Aurora clenched her jaw. It shouldn't be possible. Patel hesitated. With respect, Aurora, we left possible behind 2 phases ago. They escorted Mason out of the room after Liam fell asleep again. He resisted at first, but Aurora insisted his vitals were fluctuating, his neural activity volatile. Back in the hospital corridor, Mason collapsed onto a bench, elbows on his knees. Aurora knelt in front of him, her voice quiet but urgent. You need to tell me exactly what you experienced. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw fear not for himself, but for what he was becoming. It wasn't pain, Mason whispered. It was understanding. Like my body knew what was wrong in his. I could almost pinpoint it, like a map. Aurora's breath caught. A map? He nodded. Aurora. I felt the exact rhythm of his immune collapse. She stood abruptly, pacing in tight circles. This changes everything. Theoretically, your system is now predicting his responses. It's running simulations in real time. If we can capture those patterns, you can save him? Mason asked, a flicker of hope lighting his exhausted features. Aurora turned back to him, eyes burning with a fire he had never seen before. Yes, but only if your system stabilizes enough for us to record the resonance cycle without harming you. And if it doesn't? Mason pressed. Aurora looked away. Patel answered instead. If it destabilizes, both of you could crash. Mason froze. Both. Not just him, not just Liam. Both. Tell me what I need to do, he said, standing despite the tremors running through his muscles. Aurora stepped closer, resting a hand on his arm to steady him. To steady herself. We monitor you. Constantly. We run controlled resonance tests. And we do everything in our power to keep your system from tipping into overload. And if it does? Mason whispered. Aurora's voice cracked. Then we pull you out before the resonance becomes destructive. But if you pull me out too soon, Mason said quietly, you might miss what you need to save Liam. Aurora flinched. He was right. Every choice, now balanced on a blade's edge. Silence settled between them until Mason finally asked, when do we start? Aurora met his eyes, fear, determination, and something deeply personal shining in hers. Tonight, she said. Because time was running out, because Liam was fading, because Mason had crossed into a biological unknown only he could survive, and because, for the first time, Aurora Hale realized one devastating truth. Saving Liam now meant saving Mason first, and she wasn't sure which one she was more afraid of losing. By nightfall, Aurora's research facility felt different, not just in atmosphere but in purpose. The lights were dimmed to a softer, amber glow to avoid overstimulating Mason's hypersensitive senses. The machines hummed at lower frequencies. Monitors were recalibrated. Dr. Patel moved with heightened urgency, checking and rechecking every piece of equipment as though preparing for a storm whose force she couldn't predict. Because that's what Mason had become. A living storm. A resonance of two bodies, two immune systems, two fates intertwined in ways no human had ever experienced. Mason stood in the center of the room, trying to steady his breathing. He felt stronger and weaker at the same time, his body humming with a strange vitality that wasn't truly his. Liam's illness whispered through his nerves like an echo from another world. Aurora approached him with a tablet pressed to her chest. You don't have to do this tonight, she said softly. Her voice trembled despite her attempt to remain calm. Mason met her eyes. Liam doesn't have time. Aurora swallowed, knowing he was right. Then let me explain what happens next. He nodded. We're going to run a resonance scan, she said. Your system is mirroring Liam's. If we can capture the pattern, we can reverse engineer the template for a cure. And if the resonance goes out of control? Mason asked. Patel answered grimly. Your systems could overload. Both simultaneously. Mason exhaled slowly. Then we don't let it go out of control. Aurora stepped closer, so close he could feel her warmth, the familiar pulse beneath her skin. Mason, she whispered. If something happens to you, I don't know if I can pull you back. He offered a small, weary smile. You've pulled me back every step so far. Aurora's breath caught, her composure fracturing. For a moment, she looked at him not as a subject, but as someone she couldn't bear to lose. Mason, she murmured, promise me one thing. What? If we get what we need, if we get the map to save Liam, you stop. No more infusions, no more phases. He hesitated. Aurora, no. Her voice hardened. I won't watch you die, even if you think it's worth the cost. He held her gaze for a long, painful second, then nodded. Okay. But in his heart, he wasn't certain he could keep that promise. They began the resonance scan at midnight. Mason lay on the medical table, sensors attached to his temples, chest, wrists, and spine, each one glowing with soft pulses of violet light. Patel activated the scanner, and a low-frequency hum vibrated through the room. Aurora remained at his side, her hand gripping the table near his shoulder, not touching him, but close enough that he felt tethered to her presence. Beginning neural resonance capture, Patel announced. The lights dimmed further, the hum deepened. Inside Mason, something stirred, a ripple, a flicker, a silent tremor spreading through his nerves. Aurora leaned in. Mason? What do you feel? Everything, he whispered. Again. But this time it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't noise. It was clarity. Patterns. Interwoven signals that felt familiar, not random like before. Because this time, he wasn't experiencing his own instability. He was experiencing Liam's. Aurora looked at the monitors, and her breath caught. Mason, your neural map is aligning with Liam's readings from last week. Suddenly, Mason winced as a sharp pulse cut through his chest. Aurora reached for him instinctively. Talk to me, what's happening? He clenched his jaw, sweat forming on his brow. His weakness, it's increasing. He's struggling to regulate. I can feel his body slipping. Patel checked her tablet. Liam's vitals were stable earlier. Hes asleep. Mason shook his head violently. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Hes entering another decline. Aurora's heart jolted. Patel, call Liam's hospital and request immediate vitals. Now. Patel bolted out of the lab. Aurora turned back to Mason, pushing hair from his forehead. Her voice shook. Stay with me. The resonance is making you sensitive to fluctuations, but it doesn't mean. A loud, sharp alarm blared from the monitor. Aurora froze. The resonance graphs spiked violently, Liam's illness pulsing like a shockwave through Mason's mapped system. Aurora. Mason gasped, curling forward as if struck. He needs help. He needs. The doors burst open. Patel appeared, breathless. Aurora. Liam's vitals just dropped. The hospital is initiating emergency protocol. Aurora staggered back. Mason tore off the sensors and sat up with a sudden surge of adrenaline. Take me to my son. Now. Aurora grabbed his arm. Mason, your system is unstable. If you get too close, the resonance. I don't care, he shouted, voice cracking under the weight of terror. He needs me. Aurora's voice broke. If your resonance sinks too deeply, you could crash with him. Mason stared into her trembling eyes, desperation burning in his. Then he'll crash, he whispered. As long as he lives. Aurora's breath shattered. Patel whispered, horrified. Aurora, what do we do? Aurora closed her eyes, fighting the agony clawing through her. Then she answered. We go to the hospital. Because the truth was undeniable. Whatever Mason was becoming, whatever link had formed between father and son, Liam was slipping away. And Mason was the only one who could sense it. The drive to the hospital was suffocating. Not because of the speed Aurora drove smoothly but urgently, but because Mason felt every mile like a tightening thread inside his chest. He stared out the window, gripping the seat as waves of resonance rolled through him. Each pulse was sharper now, syncing with Liam's condition in terrifying increments. Aurora kept glancing at him, worry etched into every line of her face. You need to focus on breathing, she said softly. If your system overloads before we reach him, I'm fine. Mason whispered through clenched teeth. He wasn't fine. His nerves buzzed like electric wires. His heart beat in double rhythms, one his own, the other undeniably Liam's. Every breath carried echoes of another set of lungs struggling miles away. Dr. Patel, in the back seat, watched his vitals on a tablet. His neural conductivity is spiking again, she warned. This isn't sustainable. Just get me to him, Mason growled, a tremor shaking his arms. Aurora's grip tightened on the wheel. We're almost there. By the time they reached the hospital, Mason felt like his body was vibrating apart. The automatic doors slid open, and the moment he stepped inside, the resonance hit him like a shockwave. His knees buckled. Aurora caught him. Mason! He gasped, clutching her shoulder. Hes close, too close. His eyes clouded with something primal and instinctive. I can feel him crashing. A nurse recognized Mason and signaled urgently. Room 317, hurry! Aurora guided Mason down the hall, half supporting him, half dragging him as his legs fought to obey. Dr. Patel kept pace behind them, watching the readings spike dangerously. As they neared the room, everything sharpened, the air thickened, the lights dimmed, the hum of machines blurred into a single, rapid heartbeat. Liam's heartbeat. The resonance nearly overwhelmed him. Mason stumbled into the room and froze. Liam lay on the bed, small and still, his chest rising in shallow, sporadic movements. Nurses hovered over him, adjusting tubes, checking monitors, flashing with red warning lights. Respiratory decline, one murmured. We need to stabilize now. Mason's breath shattered. He stepped forward, but Aurora grabbed his arm. Mason, wait, your presence could deepen the resonance. If your systems sink fully, I don't care, he snapped. He needs me. Aurora's eyes burned with conflicting terror. Mason, if you fully synchronize with him, you could enter the same decline. I won't let him die, Mason said, pulling free. Not alone. The word alone fractured something inside Aurora. She watched him approach Liam's bed, each step matched by a spike on the monitors. The closer he got, the more Liam's readings flickered. Nurses gasped. Patel swore under her breath. Aurora pressed a hand to her chest. Dear God. He really is connected to the boy's immune cycle. Mason reached the bedside. Liam, he whispered, kneeling down. Buddy, I'm here. The boy's eyelids fluttered. Dad? His voice was faint as a breath lost in wind. Mason took his hand, gently terrified he might break him. The moment their skin touched, the resonance exploded. A violent pulse pierced through Mason's chest. His vision went white, every nerve screamed with the sensation of Liam's failing body. His breath hitched, then synced to the boy's shallow rhythm. Patel's tablet beeped wildly. "Aurora, it's happening! His markers are mirroring Liam's in real time!" Aurora surged forward. "Mason, let go! You're overloading." "No!" Mason yelled through the pain. "This is the only way I can feel the pattern he's slipping," Liam's voice wavered. "Dad, don't go." Mason's heart cracked. "I'm right here." His pulse plummeted. Aurora's eyes widened in horror. "Hess collapsing with Liam, pull him back!" "No!" Mason roared, clinging tighter to Liam's hand. "I can stabilize him, I have to," and then something extraordinary happened. The resonance steadied. The chaotic spikes flattened into a synchronized rhythm, two immune systems locked in balance, father and son breathing as one. Patel stared at the screen, stunned. "Aurora, this is the resonance cycle. It's the full pattern, a complete map." Aurora's breath caught. This was it, the breakthrough, the cure. But at a terrible cost. Because Mason's face had gone pale, his strength draining with every second, Liam pulled on his stability. Aurora grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Mason, stop, you'll kill yourself." He looked at her not with fear, but with quiet, heartbreaking resolve. "If one of us has to break," he whispered, "let it be me." Aurora's voice cracked. "No, no, I can't lose you." But Mason didn't look away. He held his son's hand, he held the resonance, he held the line, even as his own system began to fall. The synchronized heartbeat between father and son pulsed through the room like a living current. Machines flickered in frantic patterns. Nurses hovered at the edges of panic. Dr. Patel clutched her tablet with white knuckles, and Aurora, frozen between terror and awe, watched the impossible unfold. "Mason," she pleaded, her voice nearly breaking. "You have to let go. Your system can't sustain this level of resonance. Your vitals are crashing." But Mason didn't seem to hear her. Or maybe he did, and simply refused to acknowledge a world where he wasn't holding his son's hand. His breathing was shallow now. His skin glistened with sweat, yet his expression held a fierce, fragile peace. "Dad," Liam murmured, barely conscious. "Don't go." "I'm not going anywhere," Mason whispered, tightening his grip even as his body trembled violently. "Not ever." Aurora stepped toward him again. "Mason, listen to me. Your heart rate is sinking to his decline. If Liam slips further, you will too. You can't save him if you're dead." But Mason looked at her with a clarity that felt like a blade. "I'm not trying to save me," he said. "Just him." Something in Aurora shattered. Not her logic, not her science, her restraint. "Mason," she reached for him, her hand trembling uncontrollably. And then the resonance deepened, lights dimmed, a low-frequency hum vibrated through the room. The monitor's spikes smoothed into one flowing wave, a single immune signature shared between two bodies. Patel gasped. "Aurora, this is it. This is the complete cycle. If we capture it now, we can build the full serum." Aurora's heart hammered. "Start the extraction." Patel activated the recording module. Streams of data poured across the screen. Neural pathways, immune oscillations, cellular adaptive patterns, information that could save Liam and children like him, information worth years of research. But as the data streamed, Mason's strength waned. His head drooped. His chest faltered. The resonance began to turn on him, pulling harder, draining him faster. Aurora knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders. "Mason, stay with me. Do you hear me? Stay with me." He forced a faint smile. "It's okay. This means he'll live." "No." Tears blurred Aurora's vision. "Not if it kills you." "Mason, I can't." Her voice cracked under the weight she could no longer hide. "I can't lose you." His gaze softened, a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Aurora, you already saved me," he whispered. "You just never realized it." Her breath hitched. And then, the resonance spiked. A soundless shockwave rippled through the room, forcing Aurora and Patel back a step. The monitors screamed. Liam convulsed lightly, then steadied. Mason's body jerked once, violently, and then fell still. A heavy, suffocating silence swallowed the room. Aurora's heart stopped. "Mason!" She lunged to his side, gripping his face between shaking hands. His eyes were shut, his breathing shallow to the point of invisibility. Patel checked the screen with trembling fingers. The cycle. It's ending. The resonance stopped. Check his pulse, Aurora cried. Patel pressed her fingers to Mason's neck. A beat. Another. A faint, fragile rhythm, fighting through the darkness. He's alive, Patel whispered. But barely. Aurora nearly collapsed from relief, but the fear didn't loosen its claws. And Liam? She choked out, turning to the child's bed. The nurse monitoring him stared at her with wide, stunned eyes. His vitals. They're stabilizing. Rapidly. I've never seen anything like it. Aurora's chest tightened. Mason had done it. He had given Liam the stability his body couldn't find alone. But at a cost. She leaned over Mason again, brushing the damp hair from his forehead, tears slipping down her cheeks unchecked. You foolish, impossible man, she whispered. You saved him. And nearly lost yourself. His eyelids fluttered faintly at the sound of her voice, but he didn't wake. Patel touched Aurora's shoulder. We have enough data to build the treatment. We can save Liam now. Aurora nodded, though her voice trembled. But first, we save Mason. Because for the first time since the trial began, the line between science and love blurred completely. And Aurora Hale realized that saving this man wasn't just part of her research. It was part of her heart. In the quiet hours that followed, the hospital settled into a fragile stillness, as though the world itself were holding its breath around two lives hanging in delicate balance. Liam's monitors glowed with a newfound steadiness, proof that the resonance Mason endured had become the anchor his son so desperately needed. But just a few feet away, Mason lay motionless, suspended somewhere between endurance and collapse, his body fighting to recover from a burden no ordinary man should have survived. Aurora remained at his side, her hand resting lightly over his, whispering words he couldn't yet hear but somehow already carried in the quiet chambers of her heart. She had the data now. She had the map. She had everything she needed to save Liam. But none of it would matter unless she found a way to bring Mason back. As dawn crept across the windows, Aurora made a silent promise. She would not lose the man who had rewritten the boundaries of her science and her spirit. Because the story of Mason Ward did not end here, not while life still flickered behind his bruised eyelids, not while a father's sacrifice echoed through every heartbeat of the boy he saved.